Hello, good morning. Welcome to DAT 336. My name is Doug Booth. I'm the Go-to-Market Business Development Manager for Database Migration Accelerator. We fast forward database and analytics migrations to the AWS cloud through our service. It's a hands-on, fixed-fee migration service, along with some advisory service offerings that we're going to talk about today in helping customers migrate in a much faster, more methodical way. So today, I'm going to talk a little bit about the agenda. We're going to talk about some migration and modernization pathways. We're going to talk about how we're accelerating database migrations. We're going to talk about our DMA advisory service and also our DMA migrations service. And then I'm going to go over some just really common examples that we seem to run into frequently. So about your speaker, I've been with AWS for about 5 years. I had a really wonderful opportunity early on for the first 3.5 years to be on Amazon's enterprise migration off of Oracle, in which we completed it in 2019. We moved 7,433 databases, mostly to Aurora and RDS Postgres. But we also moved 313 of the largest, highest scale business critical services to DynamoDB, and we went non-relational with those. And I felt very lucky to be able to work with so many smart Amazonians across Amazon, yet I was an AWS employee supporting them. And we also got to then, for the next 2 years after that, we got to optimize the database environment even further and even move further out into the purpose build. So we've done it. Many of the people on the team have been through many migrations, and due to some of the complexities around migration, we think we're the right team to help many customers move much faster than they are moving today. So let's start about talking about some migration and modernization pathways. So in this diagram here, I would say if you look at the purple line, that's very much where Amazon is today as a customer. Teams that used to spend 60 weeks to scale for Prime Day. Now it takes them about 4 to 6 weeks, regardless of the forecast coming at them. How do you add the value of something like that into an ROI? Right? There's a time to value of that. What's the value of being able to re-provision in minutes versus it taking weeks? Well, for our Amazon Fulfillment Technologies, it means a lot. In fact, it means that they can get last-minute forecasts and they can adjust very quickly and adapt. So you have the flexibility. Now, customers often try to migrate and modernize, and there is a full spectrum of patterns for doing so. What we often see is a whole lot of different databases within an environment, and you see opportunities to maybe lift and shift some of it. Maybe we modernize over here. So there's a lot of different paths that people can take. Now, here's a couple pathways for innovation. You know, you can look at the application layer, the database layer, and the Windows OS layer. You can rehost the cloud, you can rehost and replatform on the cloud. You can even replace licenses or bring your own. So a lot of different directions. Do we operate on the cloud or do we go hybrid? There's all kinds of questions along the journey that we ask. And as you look out into the modernization stack, this is really where folks get the most benefit, but it does take the most lifting to achieve. And we help with a big portion of that, as you'll see later on in the presentation. Now, there is a program that we have at AWS called Database Freedom, and we are a service element of that program. We often are the delivery engine for many of the assessments that they will do, or workshops. But what's great about it is it's a database and analytics modernization program focused on enterprises. And you can really get a lot of benefits, not just from getting exposed to the tools, but also to the database services. And there's also some incentives. For instance, you can get 50% credits for doing modernized workloads versus just doing lift and shift. So there's a lot of different benefits. We often see these workshops as a great opportunity for customers who really haven't had much time around the wheel, behind the wheel of schema conversion tool or database migration service, to get familiar with those tools. These are often tools that people, while they may have heard of them, they've never really had a chance to leverage them at scale in a production-ready environment. So we do encourage folks, especially ones that have lots of SQL Server and lots of Oracle, that they'd like to move to open source. Database freedom is often where you would stop early with your account team and try to take advantage, and this is no charge, pre-sales type of motion. So lots of great benefit to our Database Freedom Program, and we hope you'll consider that along your path. So, do we lift and shift? Do we move to manage? Or do we really want to break free? Do we want to really do what Amazon did, and that's get off completely? So, we can just lift and shift. It is the quickest way. It's better to get over and take advantage of some of the benefits of the cloud. It's typically self-managed. You're still kind of, stuck with your vendor lock-in, but it's a step in the right direction. Now, where we focus is in the area in yellow. We think moving to managed through replatforming or doing full modernization is really where customers will get the greatest benefit and the greatest time to value. We also believe that our services like Quantum Ledger Database, TimeStream, there's many other purpose-built databases that are just better use fits for certain use cases. Much of what we built on DynamoDB today, I believe we would have used DocumentDB for probably half of them. And we would have been able to go a lot faster, but it didn't exist when we started moving, so we didn't have that chance. So, what I can tell you is that there is a huge benefit to breaking free, your ability to scale up and down with freedom without licensing issues, your ability to scale up and down with your customers' demand. As you know, Amazon has many peak events. We went through one this week and last Friday. So how do you scale your network up many factors over and then scale down with your customer demand? Because everything else in between is just waste, right? Amazon can do that. It's because their databases can do that and their compute technology can do it. And actually, auto-scaling can do a lot of it for you, so you don't have to worry about it. Many of these services are managed. You get out of the undifferentiated hefty lifting. So I'd like to give you one example that we had from our workflow system. There's a case study on the AWS website about this. It's called the Herd Workflow Case Study. They were facing 60 weeks to scale for Prime Day. The problem was their forecast over the next 3 years was growing exponentially, and that was already taking them more than a year. So imagine a world where all you're doing is scaling just to meet customer demand. Well, if you're doing that, you don't have a lot of time to innovate your service. You don't have a lot of time to do the things that you want to do to make your service better because you're stuck keeping the lights on. Those are not healthy environments that we believe are sustainable. And so what Herd did is they went to Dynamo. They spent about 9 months rebuilding the system completely while they had to keep the business running. And their benefit today is it takes them about 4 to 6 weeks to scale, regardless of what they're facing from a forecast. So now they get to spend more than half their time innovating and building new features to a service, which makes it better for their customers. That's one of many enablements that teams will get by being a little more radical with their thinking, by thinking much bigger. And how do we want it to be versus, do we want this to just kind of get us along? Or do we want to be buried in keeping the lights on and scaling this thing, which could still break at any time? That was our problem in many cases, is our sheer scale at Amazon was breaking commercial databases. So we really had no choice. We needed to work to something that could handle the scale and scale both up and down without this lock-in in increments. So we really do think modernizing and breaking free is the way to go. And DMA is a team that can help you with that. It's staffed with hundreds of people that have been through these types of migrations that can actually do the refactoring work, the advisement, the assessment work, and help build out a plan. So let's talk a little bit more about DMA and how we're doing accelerating our database migrations and analytics migrations for our customers. So today, DMA, we're part of the AWS Database Service Organization. So while we're not pro-server partners, we can work with any of them. We can be engaged. We've been brought into pro-serve deals where they needed to move fast and do some workload migrations quickly. And there was a benefit to offering it a fixed fee. It took the risk away from the customer, and it allowed them to know exactly what the price would be without any form of variable. There's a huge benefit to them. The team includes experts in all areas of the database migration spectrum. We look at it from more of the migration assess, mobilize, and modernize pillars. And then our staff includes database engineers, migration specialists, success managers. We have technical project managers. We have lots of solution architects, and even many of our business leaders have been at this for over 25 years. Some of them have been at Oracle and Microsoft as well. And what is DMA? We're really two things. We're really a set of pre-sales advisory services that are done at no cost to the customer. And then we have the fixed fee migrations. That's where, hey, we want to toss this one over to AWS. We want them to take on all the risk and just do it for us as quickly as possible. So we can do a hands-on keyboard migration for the customer for workloads that fit within 3 categories today. As we expand out over the next coming years, we'll be offering more analytic and database workload target engines and services. Today, we have a lot of strength around firm fixed price workload installations, and we also do the last mile services. So all the user acceptance testing, making sure that it's really ready to go into production. So why? Simply to move faster. Many customers want to move to open source databases. They want to benefit from being able to scale up and down and from the advanced features that many of these new databases offer that the commercial database engines do not. We think it's good to engage us early. If there is future state design reviews going on about what the network's going to look like over the next 3 years, if there's a licensing renewal coming up in the next 6 to 12 months from Microsoft or Oracle, all good situations to have the discussion to talk about, hey, what would that world look like? What I know is if Amazon can do it in a completely decentralized IT environment where they also couldn't have a special SWAT team come in and help them, each and every one of those 2 pizza teams had to do their own migration. While they kept the business running, they had to do dual operations until they felt good and had data consistency, until they felt ready to cut over, right? So if they can do it in that environment, well, most organizations aren't Amazon. They're not decentralized. And they can use SWAT teams. We're your SWAT team, and we can help customers with the migrations by doing them for them or helping them get good at building them and building a migration factory of their own. So this is the slide. This is DMA. This is what we do. We're broken out into strategy and planning. Everything in purple is currently not billed for. It's considered pre-sales, customer investment. So as you move to the right, that's where we do the conversion and migration piece. The items in yellow would be fixed fee build. So let's start on the far left. So the database and analytics portfolio discovery, we can look at individual workloads, or we can actually look at the whole inventory of databases across an enterprise and come up with a plan. Now, in a portfolio discovery, those definitely take longer, depending on how big the organization is. But we're used to seeing databases older than 30 years old that have been manipulated many times over, usually for performance. We've seen that. We even have workarounds for when people remove things completely so the database runs faster, but some migration and schema conversion tools might not be able to read it real well if you've removed these elements. So there's a lot of tips and tricks that we've learned over the years, and it's important to assess and get a full inventory and build your burn down chart by organization to look at the whole environment and say, what do we have to work with and how would we work backwards to migrate everything on a particular timeline. Now, we also go through a detailed workload analysis where we can break down the level of effort for both what it would take to convert the application and what it would take to convert the database. You have to do both. And so while we do this, This gives us a much better level of effort requirement so we don't make mistakes, so we don't underestimate. We also suggest for some teams to make sure to budget for dual operations. There may be a period of time that comes where, for Amazon, they had some teams said, look, we have to have data consistency for 3 months before we're willing to cut over. Okay, great, we can do that. Some teams want to cut over as fast as they can. It depends on what your user acceptance is. But what I can tell you is dual operations is very important because we could not have downtime. So when you don't want downtime, you got to run dual operations with data consistency checks. Now, another element, and we talked about this a bit earlier, is a database freedom workshop. Database freedom workshops are typically 2 to 5 day events that are meant to prove out and show off the database technologies and some of the migration tools. Often we will select a very standard workload for the customer's environment that they think is maybe a lower risk one, that we would go through kind of a mock setup of taking a look at it with DMS and schema conversion tool, looking at the level of effort it might take to convert the database and applications, and also to get familiar with the tools and get good at leveraging them. But of course, and many smart people have told me this on the team, is that we really can't, do item number 1, the portfolio discovery or workload analysis, without the big arrow in purple, and that's our future state design. Without that, it's hard to know. You don't really want to go at it and say, well, we just want it to kind of work the way it did, but we want it on open source. There's a huge opportunity to add functionality. There's a huge opportunity to modernize, but some people just want to move it over. So we can help in a number of ways, but the more we understand about where our customers want to go and where they want to be, the better we can help them design out a plan that's achievable, that we can pick a date and work backward from, and that we can get the results that really matter. Now, the workload-based migration and planning section is very important. That's where we're going to lay it all out and determine with our project folks what it would take to do this, whether it's an individual workload, a series of workloads, or the entire inventory of databases. Now, Amazon had 7,433 databases. We did those over 3.5 years. A lot of them concurrent, but there were many dependencies, so there was some coordination required. We didn't want databases breaking downstream, so we did have a lot of coordination going on. But most customers don't have that many. Amazon was one of the larger Oracle and a large Microsoft customer, so what we find is that many customers have a manageable amount, and we can build the plan very quickly, and we can help them find database freedom much faster than they would often find it on their own. Often just having the conversation about Database Migration Accelerator and what we can bring to the table, often just by having that conversation, it moves the conversation forward for our customers and for the account teams, because they realize that they have a team that will walk the path with them and that has done this before, that we know what we're doing. Now, as you move out to the right, a proof of concept to us is not a pilot. A proof of concept is a sandbox throwaway environment. It's to prove out a theory or a methodology that the team has challenges with, they don't think it's going to work, and to work through it and show them how it could work and how it would work. Typically, this would be a very short engagement that we would try to prove out the technology to help with the customer's confidence level and to help with the education level as well. Now, as you move down to the bottom, Center of Excellence Teammates, which is the final investment service. So one thing we found for customers who have been highly successful with migrations to AWS as a whole and with databases is to have a Cloud Center of Excellence within your organization, a select group of people whose mission is to make sure that the company operates well on the cloud and that they take a look at how they're operating, because how you operate in the cloud is not how you would operate in the bare metal world. There's differences. And so often we find that these teams, having a core team of folks that are also connected high up to the leaders, we can put a person in there to be a contributor to that team and to help guide them as more of a senior technical advisor throughout their journey. We find this to be helpful and keep the customer very close to AWS through this journey. Many of the database migrations take months or years, depending on how many they have, and we want to make sure you have the right people with you the entire part of the journey. So now as we move into yellow, let's talk about the box on the right, the DMA production ready fixed price pilot. So that is going to go to production. A great example for that would be, hey, we want to start somewhere, and we want to start with one, and we want to move it over, and we want to learn as much as we can, and then we would like to learn from that and build our own migration factory. We'd like to get good at this ourselves because we think we can do it. ISVs are great candidates for this because they do have a lot of builders that are motivated, and we've seen great success within some of our ISVs in moving a lot of their databases or expanding their ISV offerings out into open source in addition to their Oracle and Microsoft offerings. So we found that to be very helpful. And we would want everybody to learn as much as possible during this and really deliver a pilot that is meaningful, that can be held up high, and to show the organization what is possible. It has to start with one. An avalanche often starts with a very small snowball, and you want it to grow fast, and you want people to be excited fast. So it's often good to take one and work down the stack and learn as much as you can, both good and bad, and then keep going, and then do the next one, and the next one. So as we move over into the solid box, which is required if you want us to do the migration for you, is a fixed fee migration. That's where you throw it over the fence to us. You say, while we'd love to do this, we're going to spend our time getting more operationally ready to operate on the cloud. We're going to figure out how we're going to work with enterprise support and what our new model will look like going forward. But we would like you to move this Microsoft or Oracle workload for us. We want AWS to do the hands-on keyboard work to completely move the database and application at a fixed fee. We do it in 3 categories today. You can kind of see it as an easy, medium, and hard. And then we would move out into a category in 4 and 5 we would typically, that are much bigger, more advanced. We would often work with ProServe and partners on those, but we can still help them with the advisory and the assessment phases and stay connected in there. The benefit to this is that the customer's risk is taken out of it, and they get a fixed price. There's no variable. In a project plan, we can do multiples. So we have an ISV today, as one example, who asked us to get engaged because they had a lot of learning to do and they wanted to move fast. But they didn't have confidence that they were good at doing it yet. And so they asked us to come in and do a handful of them for them, but they wanted to work with us and get good at the same time. What it's developed into today is we're doing it all together. AWS is helping with some of the more complex ones as they get good at some of what we might consider category 1s. And then they've now had a plan to do their whole portfolio because they've gotten better at it. They built confidence working with us, and they have a work backward date now to move all of it. But it had to start somewhere. They were not there 6 months ago. As an organization, they did not have the confidence to proceed that path yet because not enough people were on board and not enough people had the expertise yet, so it took a while to build that. Once they built it, they're moving at record speed right now. They think they're actually going to be done 6 months sooner than projected. Now, another part, which is optional, you'll notice it has a dotted line around it, is the last mile migration engineering. Now, while our fixed price migrations do the refactoring of the database and app, we package it up ready for the customer to launch it into production. However, if the customer says, well, we want AWS to also do that piece and bring it to that level for us to help us with the user acceptance testing, make sure everything's on track, we can do that for you as well. So you have the option to have AWS hold your hand all the way through into production. And we believe that if you do a couple with us and see what is possible, the result is often the customer starts doing them on their own much quicker. but having AWS walk the journey with them helps them with confidence and expertise and people in the same room with them, guiding them through a pretty technically complicated process. So today, this is what DMA looks like for database and analytics. We expect this diagram to grow and for us to be able to offer more analytics options into Redshift as one example. Today, we're looking at a number of different services that will be moving from commercial to Redshift. Right now, today, our primary focus is Microsoft and Oracle databases and moving them over to AWS. Now, I'm going to go a little bit deeper. We have, as we move on in the presentation, we have multiple slides, one on each one of these button points to go a little bit deeper into them to help you understand what the outcome should be from that engagement, along with what types of resources from the customer and the account team are typically required during that part of the migration. So we'll first talk about our DMA advisory team. These would be all of the complementary investment-based services today that we would not charge the customer for. So let's first start with the database and analytics portfolio discovery. This is one of the most critical parts. If you don't know what you have, you don't know what to move or how to turn it into a future state. So this is really where we work closely with the account team and assess the data and support the creation of the business use case with data that the account team can use in the business cases. This is to help high-level analysis of the selected workloads with a focus on how to move it as quickly as possible with no risk. The key activities are typically the discovery phase, in which we'll go through Migration Evaluator. One of the tools we use is Modelize IT. Some customers prefer other tools. There are a number of tools out there, but we found that to be a pretty good one. And we often have an account SA and a platform SA involved in that phase. We will do the analysis of what we would call migration portfolio assessment and use that tool to analyze everything from the servers, workloads, processing, and then be able to work on a full discovery and analysis that the outcome would be a cataloging of the server level details of the application and the database. And so you have a real idea of what's it going to take to convert, right? What's at least at a high level is the level of effort going to be required to do this? Now, the resources involved are often SAs, both from the platform and the account team. But often we'll have, of course, our DMA advisor, who we'd like to have assigned throughout the entire journey. So we don't want to be changing resources, right? We want somebody to be there with you the whole way. But also, oftentimes, this could be a ProServe or a partner engagement. So for customers that have a preference, they might have a partner they love working with, we can still be involved. We can do the fixed price migrations along with the partner or on the partner paper if necessary. And what we really feel here is that if you have a good catalog, I'll share with you, the way we did it for Amazon is we had what was called a catalog burn down chart. And every vice president and all the databases they owned under their org were on the burn down chart. We had a status, a date that was targeted for migration, and exactly where they were at, and once a week, it had to be updated on Monday. And we did that for 3.5 years. And we followed it, and we burned it down. And we achieved it on time. We got done about 2 months early, So you want to work backward from something on something like this, especially if there are hundreds or thousands of databases. There's a lot to work on. The next step, and again, this is another critical step, is the assessment and the future state design. What do we want it to look like? What do we have, and what does it need to look like? That's a really important question to answer. A lot of folks get really caught up in, hey, we need to get off of Oracle, or we need to get off Microsoft. But oftentimes, it's really tough to know where to start. Sometimes it's tough to even understand what does getting off mean and what are the responsibilities involved, right? It's a difficult conversation for some folks, but to us it's not difficult. It's very simple. But you do have to have a good inventory, and you do have to have a future plan. The quicker we can get to a crystal clear future state design, the quicker we can understand exactly what it's going to take to meet your requirements. Now, during this process, we do a lot of analysis, rationalization, and then we will help develop that future state design with you. We want to make sure it meets your requirements, but also fill you in on some of the capabilities that you may not be aware of, so you have an effective future design that's going to meet your business needs, not just get you what you had running on the cloud in the same way. We really think modernizing is the way to go. And what you'll get from this level of effort, the outcome here, is to get a total migration effort and platform cost estimates for all of the workloads that are in scope. Now we know. Once you know, then you can make decisions. The resources typically involved in these are platform SAs, our DMA advisors, could be pro server partners, could be just DMA, just depends on the circumstances. And on the customer side, we work a lot with the app and DB specialists and anyone they have assigned as a migration lead on this element. Now, Database Freedom Workshop is something that can actually happen during the process of a migration. We usually like to see this happen as early as possible, especially if there are going to be team members involved in the actual migrations. It helps us with potential scopes and timelines, helps us get all the right stakeholders together in a project group. We can address a lot of questions during this from a lot of different stakeholders. Some might be business, some might be technical stakeholders. This is also a great opportunity to educate. A lot of folks just aren't familiar with all the tools. There are many tools out there that can be used. Some people want to use a certain tool because it's preferred, but they may not even be aware that other tools exist that could be more effective for them. We also want to, as I discussed before, these are typically 2 to 5 day engagements. And we would often pick like 3 to 5 representative workloads to get the customer familiar, typically low risk ones, and would take a look at rationalizing what would it take to refactor these and replatform. What would be the right purpose built? We could do it in Dynamo, but would another one make more sense? It just depends. Should it be RDS or should it be Aurora? Well, they're both great, but I think if you need Oracle RAC type functionality, you probably want to be looking at Aurora, right? And so we can go through a lot of these decision points. And then at the end, you'll end up with your high level future state design. And what this really helps with here is it does help with buy-in. You know, one of the key learnings from the Rolling Stone migration that Amazon did was you really do need top-down and bottoms-up support to be successful in a migration across an enterprise. Without the executives being on board and without the DBAs and the program management aboard, it's going to be tough to be successful. When you have them all on board, you'd be surprised at how remarkably fast you can move. Now, what we think here is that these types of workshops will help the customer get exposed to the tools, the products, and some of the people. And it'll give them a bit of a taste of what it's going to look like as we start to move into real migration, and they'll be much further along in their journey. So we also have to do the workload-based migration planning. How are we going to do this end to end, and what exactly does it look like? What are the exact steps that we're going to take? Okay? What will it take to move from the existing state to fully converting, testing, tuning, and getting it ready for a live deployment? The key activities here, again, are analyze your server and workload dependencies on each other, making sure that we have the detailed migration wave planning. We did a lot of migration waves, and often those will tie into your burn down charts, right? And make sure that we understand all the dependencies, because we don't want things breaking downstream. Another lesson we learned very quickly on Amazon's migration is you want to know your dependencies of all your databases. If not, you can quickly lose momentum and credibility of your project, because people will say, well, see, I told you so. when the reality is it's just a miss on project planning and project methodology. It's nothing more than that. You don't have to overcomplicate it. It's a simple miss. If you don't miss that, you can be highly successful very fast. And think about it, 7,433 databases in 3.5 years. That's a lot. That's a lot. That's cut over running 3.5 years. So it's possible. It's possible in a completely decentralized IT environment. And if you don't have decentralized IT, which most don't, you can move even faster than we did. Something to think about. It's very possible. So we don't want people to think, oh, well, hey, that was Amazon. They were special. They had some extra amount of money or some special team or no, actually, they had to do it the hard way and keep the business running. And I admire these people. I got to work with so many smart people during the migration, and they actually pulled it off. I believe that any customer can, that doesn't have a decentralized IT environment, they can move at light speed compared to what we were working with at the time. I'd also tell you that at the time we were doing this, when we started in 2016, Aurora didn't exist. We knew it was coming. Then when it came out, Change Data Capture didn't come out as soon as we had hoped. That caused a problem with how we wanted to feed some of our data lakes. So we did it in a much ambiguous environment. In fact, today, not only is Dynamo completely fortified, but we have Aurora and RDS moving at light speed, but now we have DocumentDB, we have TimeStream, we have Quantum Ledger Database, we have MemoryDB. So we have a lot of other options that weren't available back then that I think if they were, we would have moved even faster. Something to think about. There's a lot of great services out there that I encourage you to explore. Like I said, I believe many of the things we built in Dynamo, not all of them, but a number of them could have been built faster and met the requirement quicker had they, in some cases, used DocumentDB. It's a perfect fit. So purpose-built, I'm a big believer. I've seen it in action, and I've seen what it can do for the business, and it's remarkable. By the way, we also didn't know COVID was coming, and completing that migration in 2019, I really feel it enabled us to operate and enable our workforces and our customers through one of the most difficult times in my lifetime from my career. Having our databases being able to scale up and down gave us efficiencies that we needed during a very difficult time where we had to adjust our business model and our priorities to meet a unique situation that I don't think any of us have faced in our lifetime. I'm very grateful that we had moved and got that done before COVID hit. So I talked a little bit about Center of Excellence teammates. This is really where we bring somebody in to be on your team. Thought leadership, somebody that can guide you, shepherd you, make sure that we can handle even things like COE support, DMS support, helping make sure the success criteria is managed, but we would want to help influence your team and make sure that you felt we were with you the entire journey. There's no cost to this. If we are working with you in a migration effort, we would be more than happy to work with you. We also have another program through one of our teams within the Data Labs group that has a resident architect program. We've just helped an ISV recently bring in a resident architect, and we're bringing in a DMA advisor. They're going to have two excellent resources from two teams within AWS, helping guide them, helping provide all the technical detail necessary for them to be successful, and actually to double down on their timeline. They want to move twice as fast as we originally thought. So we have to work backwards to do that. On this Center of Excellence, your outcome is really unlocking of the customer's migration journey and acceleration of the program. We would be there with you. It would be like AWS doing it with you and for you. And you're closest to the sun that way. And our people are directly connected to the AWS Database Service Organization. So you're about as close as you can be. The resources here would be the database and analytics engineering teams, could be ProServe and partners, and certainly the DMA advisor. And our customer here, this could be the key stakeholders up to the C-levels. It could be the app owners, the program office, the migration leads, hopefully the leader of your project management office, your PMO. We think all of these folks having somebody from our team there with them would offer significant value. and help make sure that we always have a presence with you. And then proof of concept, this is the last item of the no charge services. This is what we discussed earlier as the more of a demonstration of a migration of a sample application. This is again intended typically to be throwaway and just to prove out and show the customer what is possible. Typically the activities here would be to define the POC and what the outcome should be. What is the success criteria of this? And then your outcomes are going to be clear and executable next steps, post proof of concept that accelerate the customer's journey. So we would want, it could be ProServe partners or DMA and the account team here. It's definitely the customer account team, platform SAs and DMA advisors. And then certainly the customer key stakeholders and the migration leads would be involved in this element. Again, this is a big part of the education process and being able to see with your own eyes what's possible without breaking anything, without risking too much, but it feels real. It's a sandbox environment, we'll call it. So we'll move over now into DMA migration. So this is the fee-based stuff that we're going to talk about now. This is, hey, we can hand this over to AWS and they can do it for us. So the production-ready pilot, during this activity, the customers would validate certain conversion and migration patterns. We'd go through the whole process of selecting workloads and having DMA do a limited production-ready pilot. We would help with the workload selection and the migration execution during this phase. And what we would hope for at the end of this for a deliverable outcome would be a successful migration pilot, and the AWS team and the customer teams will be fully mobilized to migrate and modernize at scale. So this would be, hey, let's try it. Let's get good at it together. Let's learn as much as we can. Let's document it, especially where there's repeatable patterns. By the way, repeatable patterns is one of the things that allowed Amazon's fulfillment technology organization to migrate 300 sites in 6 months across the globe without failure. They had very little time to what was considered more of a maintenance window to do their migrations. And with that, the benefit them today, outside of the tremendous cost savings that they have, is they can reprovision their network in minutes. It used to take weeks. So when we were getting up to a peak event, once the forecast was in, there was just like, you can't change it. Today, we can get curveballs thrown at us from all directions, and we can meet the requirement, which allows our business to make sure those packages are never late and that they're always delivered. So what we'd hope from this one here is to make sure that everybody's ready to go, that they're starting to feel confident, that they understand all of the elements, and that they would have the confidence to move forward with doing a full-scale migration. And the fixed price migration, now this is really the one that folks want to see. It's the most critical activity, and the reality is if we're doing fixed fee migration, we're taking you through all of the elements of the journey in the diagram that I've shown you. It's going to be all of it, right? Now, during this is the hands-on keyboard stuff. This is us doing the refactoring of both the database and the application. And by the way, that is the work that if you gave teams 10 things to do and that was on the list, it appears that they would want to deprioritize that to number 10 as quickly as possible. And here's why. It's risky. If it's not done right, it's highly visible to the organization. And people haven't had the opportunity to do it or get a lot of training on it. So why would they want to? They need the opportunity to get good at it. They deserve the opportunity for training if they're being expected to migrate. And if you think about it, folks that have been in Microsoft or Oracle, they've had years of training. So don't forget about the training. It's easy to overlook in any migration is, what about the training? Who's going to deal with the DevOps? Does anybody have DevOps on AWS? Does anybody have big data on AWS. There's a lot of great certifications worth considering. And so let's not forget about the education, just like we don't want to forget about the dependency planning, right? They're all critical steps in the journey. This hands-on delivery has detailed architectural design components. It has the database and analytics platform full refactor conversion. And if we're going to do any replatforming or rehosting, oftentimes minimum changes would be required, but there is the opportunity to do some modernization in here. And so this is a lot of conversations with the customer to determine what that end state needs to look like. We also have to go over the app tier and remediate all the application issues. And you know, somebody really smart taught me about the steps of a migration and what percentages of time things take. Over 50% of the migration is in the testing, is in the debugging, and is in the conversion, and is in the assessment work. Over half of the project is that. The testing and bug fixing is very important. Query optimization review, very important. You have to go through and test the queries, make sure they're running at the right speed. We've run into some situations where we've been asked to help and provide an opinion post-migration. Somebody did it themselves. And they're saying, well, hey, you know, I'm not seeing the performance. I don't understand it. I'm confused. And then we take a look, and oftentimes the culprit is there was no query testing done, zero. And so they just moved it and didn't test it, and it's not performing. Once we figured that out and did some optimization testing, no problem. We could get it to run way faster. But if you just move it in its current state and don't do anything to test it, you might not always be happy. So don't forget about the testing, right? The testing and making sure everything runs as good or better is a key part of this. The outcome of this is, this is the fun part. The customer gets a fully converted workload with qualified and documented test results. So the database and the app get converted here. And we do that work for you. We have conversion experts in Europe and in America. Most of the work we do out of Poland for the conversion and refactoring work. We have a whole team, and that's all they do. These folks don't split their time between AI and ML and other services. All they do is migrations, just migrations. So if that's all you do all day long, you tend to get pretty good at it. And you're not scattered across 10 different topics. You're a migration specialist. So these are senior folks. They've done this time and time again. And today I have Dimitri Balin and Kapil Kapoor from our team. These folks report up to Kapil and Dimitri, and they'll be available with us for questions afterward if you'd like to meet us. These guys have seen it by the thousands. They know how to do database migrations and analytics migrations at scale in a factory type of environment to really do it for real. And it's possible. This is possible. And like I said before, if you have a central IT team and you have executive buy-in and team buy-in, you can really move way faster than Amazon did. I guarantee you. Now the resources here this is where all of our migration success managers and delivery engineers, this is hardcore code work. This is hands-on keyboard work, okay? This is the work that most teams and customers we've talked to have described as, while we would love to do it, we don't feel that we're very good at it. We haven't had the opportunity to become good at it. And we see it as pretty risky work. We would like help, or we would like somebody to just do that work for us. We have to keep the business running, and we're trying to get operationally ready to run our databases. So we want to dive our time in there while you guys do it, and then help us with the cutover, and then help us get good at operating it, and then transition out. So that's very possible to do. That's one of many ways to do it. And so on this side here, today, like I said, we offer 3 categories of service we'll call it easy, medium, and hard. And we do have availability to help customers starting this year and look forward to working with customers to do these migrations for them. And it would be a great outcome is that if we could do these migrations together, a great outcome is that the customer was enabled to build their own migration factory and got good at it, like we did at Amazon. We weren't as good at it at first, but I'll tell you, once we got to the 50% mark, where we knew at least half of the databases were now open source, the other 50% came really fast. The remaining 50% moved fast once we realized we were halfway there. Getting halfway there seemed like it was tough at times, but once we were, it was remarkable. Then it was almost a race to not be last and see who could innovate the most while they were doing their migration. So really great outcomes. So again, at a high level, our service is a firm fixed price. So there's no variance to it. When we have to have the chance to at least assess the workloads. But if we've committed to category 1, 2, or 3, it is a fixed price, hands-on, risk mitigated. Look at it as a force multiplier. How could I leverage a team to move faster with my team without it being all my people? DMA. So we do it at a fixed competitive price. You'll know exactly how much it's going to cost. You only pay upon the successful completion, by the way. So we don't charge you until you say, yep, we're done, we're completed. Okay? That's how confident we are in our ability to execute, is we will do it at a firm fixed price. We will reduce the complexity. We're going to do the work for you. We'll take the complexity away from the team, and they can focus on getting ready to operate. We accelerate the migrations by doing them with experts that have done many of these, and we just do it faster, because that's all we do. Now, the last mile migration engineering is a critical step because it's got to go to production. Most of our customers that have been on AWS a while tend to do this piece themselves or prefer to. But we can help get it into the production-ready state. That is a SAO-based fixed price engagement. Some examples would be data conversion and use DMS and other tools to fully convert all of the production desired data into the converted workload, right? User acceptance testing, that's a big one. Want to make sure that the user's requirements are met. And the production cutover, create an end state environment that is ready for a production launch. So all critical elements. Now the outcome would be a final state production ready system that is acceptable by the users to be launched. The resources involved would be your migration success managers. Delivery engineers could be pro-serve and partner if they are engaged with us. And then your DB and app specialists and your migration leads would be on this part. So this is taking it live. And we can help with that portion as well. Now, DMA is very focused on the fixed fee migrations. We think we're good at them, and we think we're good enough that we can offer a firm fixed price on it. Not many folks would be comfortable. In fact, a lot of folks would say, hey, let's just do T&M. We don't think time and materials make sense in this particular case for these particular types of workloads. We think that more customers would appreciate fixed price migrations where they know exactly how much it's going to cost, not maybe, kinda. We want to know exactly how much it's going to cost and have a very crystal clear plan on all the steps to get there. Now, real quick, let's go through a few use cases before we wrap up. We're almost to the finish line. So I've got 6 example use cases up here. These aren't all of them, but these are some pretty common ones. Hey, we're on EC2, but now we really want to get to RDS. Another one is, hey, we've got on-premise Postgres, but we want to actually get to Aurora. We don't want it on our equipment anymore. No problem. What about relational to DynamoDB? Well, we've seen a lot of that. A lot of folks do look at high scale, high transaction workloads and say, hey, maybe Dynamo could be a fit here. Sybase ASE to Amazon Redshift. We see a lot of scalability and innovation happening there. Multiple relational databases to an S3 data lake. How do you get all your data in, and then once it's in, what do you do with it? And one of the things I learned during the Amazon Rolling Stone migration was we also shut down one of the world's largest Oracle data warehouses and built a data lake on Redshift. And also, it also uses S3. What I realized is that it's tough to have your database conversations today without the analytics folks in the room, right? Because how are you going to feed that data lake? And really, where is all the data? Is it in silos across hybrid and bare metal and cloud environments, or is it all in one place? I can tell you if it's in 3 different places, it's a lot tougher to bring together and make any sense of. When it's all on AWS, you'd be amazed at what you can do with QuickSight. We are big users of QuickSight. It ties into all of our AWS database services, and we actually find that we were able to grow our data lake much quicker with efficient data in that manner. And then we see a lot of Azure SQL. Hey, I'm on Azure, I'm on SQL Server, but I really want to move to Aurora. That is one of the more common themes right now, often driven by some type of licensing renewal or some type of agreement renewal. A little bit deeper into scenario 1, a customer may want to reduce their costs and lower operational overhead by migrating SQL Server enterprise databases running on EC2 hosts over to RDS SQL Server Standard. We help with the future state design. We implement performance and scalability requirements. And we talk about planning and automation to facilitate a production cutover. Customers get reduced costs, reduced operational overhead, minimize the risk, and it enables adoption, right? They can move faster. On-prem Aurora to Aurora Postgres on AWS. If you want to expand globally quickly, it's way easier if you're on AWS. You can pick data centers around the planet. And we think that, again, you're going to see in all of these, we're typically talking a future state design at some point, how we would implement the performance, scalability, and availability requirements, maybe even do a proof of concept to prove it out, and refactor the database and applications. Customer gets to the benefits of innovating faster with open source platforms and using feature-rich tools. Also reduce complexity by breaking free from commercial databases, and build in scale to meet growth expectations. If you have any real scale coming your way, AWS databases are the best thing I've ever seen to address even Amazon scale. Relational database to DynamoDB. Customer wants technical advice to support a partner implementing improving responsiveness to a suite of write-intensive DB2 transactional systems. We could conduct portfolio discovery, perform the workload assessments for the customer, help with the future state design, again, in every one of these, future state design, and apply our technical expertise to help convert complex relational schema to NoSQL. That's a tough topic. Non-relational, relational, sometimes that's tough for folks to think non-relationally. But we have some folks that can help with that and help make it easy, actually. Again, a customer's going to have increased application responsiveness. They're going to have expert access. They'll be able to work with us. And we can even help on best practices. And then finally, Sybase ASE to Redshift. Often customers want to gain extra scalability and innovate faster by migrating to Redshift. We can help design that future state. We can do the refactoring. We can rewrite the legacy ETL jobs. Customer's going to end up with a modern warehouse. They're going to reduce cost and operational overhead, and they're going to minimize migration risk by getting guidance from us. Multiple relational databases to S3. Customers want analytics. It's one of the faster growing areas of the business. They might feel that they're limited by large numbers of database instances across multiple database platforms and types. We would typically help design a future state application and database architecture. We build the data lake for analytics by replicating transactional databases, often using DMS to S3. And we build monitoring service to help with the data quality. Customer gets unfiltered data access for analytics, and they can leverage lakehouse patterns to improve data management and costing. And then finally, Azure SQL DB to Aurora. That one's very common today. A lot of people just want to move off of Azure over to AWS. And we have a plan. We can map out the Azure technologies, and we can end up giving a customer a strong compliance infrastructure. They can gain scalability and train customers and the partner on best practices. So with that, DMA fast forwards database and analytics migrations to AWS. And we appreciate you coming and spending time with us, and we hope you will please complete the session survey. Thank you for having us, and we can join you outside for questions if you have any questions. Thank you.